I recognize you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a resolution under the Congressional Review Act to nullify the Department of Labor's new independent contractor rule. This rule is a threat to the livelihood of millions of Americans. It is the last thing our workforce needs right now. It is the last thing our economy needs right now. This rule makes it harder for individuals to continue operating as independent contractors who are self-employed individuals contracted to perform work or provide services to another person or business. Workers, employers, and consumers have long benefited from independent work and the opportunity for workers and businesses to pursue the American dream. Independent contractors have the freedom to choose their own work schedules. Employers maintain flexibility to adjust work demands with business needs, and consumers benefit from a reduction in the cost of goods and services. President Biden's Department of Labor issued a final rule in January, which could destroy the independent contractor model as we know it. The rule is modeled on a law from California known as AB 5. It's an infamous law because its harmful effects are now so clearly recognized. It's been condemned, AB 5 has, from across the political spectrum. In fact, the law is so damaging that the legislature in California has now created exemptions from the law for 109 categories of workers. And a recent study provided empirical support for what we've known for since the law was enacted. It showed that there's been a 10.5% decline in self-employment since this law went into effect in California, and a 4.4% decline in overall employment. That is tens of thousands of livelihoods that have been destroyed. Now, the evidence on AB 5 is so clear that the supporters of the Biden administration's rule have tried to dissociate the new rule from AB 5 to say that it's somehow something different. And this just isn't so. The reason we know that is because President Biden has explicitly said that AB 5 is his model for labor relations nationwide. And of all the people that he could have chosen to nominate for Secretary of Labor, he picked the very architect of AB 5 itself, Julie Su, who as the Secretary of Labor in California was responsible for enforcing AB 5 to such a devastating effect. But even putting that aside, even without considering the precedent of AB 5, this rule is extremely problematic on its face. The rule says that no one factor is dispositive, and the weight given each factor may depend on the facts and circumstances of the particular relationship. There are 6 factors overall, so this means that the Department of Labor will use all 6 factors as broadly as possible to find independent contractors are employees. Among other concerning provisions is the factor regarding whether a worker is, quote, an integral part of the company's business. What is considered integral is ill-defined and will result in confusion and invite frivolous litigation that could ultimately have a chilling effect on independent work opportunities and entrepreneurship generally. And indeed, when we had the administrator of the Wage and Hour Division before my subcommittee recently, I asked her some very straightforward questions as to how realtors would be classified, as to how truckers would be classified, as to how journalists would be classified, and she could not give an answer to any of those questions. And so it raises the question as to how our workforce is supposed to respond to a rule that not even the administrator seems to understand. A report from Credit Summit found that of the roughly 73 million American independent contractors, only 9% would prefer to have a traditional job, compared to 79% of them who prefer the freelancing status that they have. In 2021, the Trump Department of Labor published a workable standard that simplified the economic realities and worker classification test under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Under this approach, there were 2 core factors that guided worker classification determinations: the nature and degree of the worker's control over the work and the worker's opportunity for profit or loss. This approach clarified the department's interpretation of worker classification status under the Fair Labor Standards Act, provided more certainty for workers and employers, and promoted economic growth. Unfortunately, the 2021 standard has been replaced by this new rule, which went into effect on March 11th. This Department of Labor rule should be rescinded, and instead, we should have a rule that supports work and small businesses and supports self-employed workers and removes impediments for those who wish to pursue independent work or do business with the independent contractor workforce. So I encourage members of the committee on both sides of the aisle to come together to support our workers and to support our economy and to rescind this harmful rule. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.